Hello. In this tutorial, we are going to consider a new tool called Alteryx. We will also talk about how to import data and the three major components that make up the screen below. Once you open Alteryx from your source, you will get a sheet that looks like this, which is probably a little different than most sheets that you have. Across the very top, there's a lot of different choices, and then below this, we have options. Now, it generally starts with the favorites, so you'll notice they have little stars on them. The green ones indicate inputs or outputs that you're generally going to want to do when you bring data in or want to save it. Prep tool is going to give you the opportunity to clean or sample or use formulas or sort your data. The join will allow you to do things like union and join and other things, parse for separation, transformation, and then some more complex. But the ones you're typically going to use are up here at the top. You have three areas that you're going to bring the data in. Now, we're going to focus on reading data in at this point, in which case what we're going to want to do is input data. In order to do that, most of the work that's going to comprise your workflow, that is kind of the visual across the top here that shows the story of what you've done to bring data in, manipulate, aggregate, clean, etc. And so the first thing we want to do is input data. So what we'll do is we'll drag the input data from the top here and drop it right here on our workflow. In the workflow then, it's going to basically ask the question, well, what did you want to input? So that's going to open over here in your configuration file. The configuration file really starts by asking you the question, well, what would you like to input? And so you can use the drop-down and say, I would like maybe an Excel file or a CSV file. So I'm going to go to Files. I'm going to choose an Excel file, and I'm going to choose one located on my desktop that takes a look. I wanted XLS, I think, at the data set that we're going to be using here, which is the Fay Alegria Bolivia data set, specifically the school, Fray Vicente Bernardo. So I'm going to ask it to go to Files. I'm going to ask it to go to XLSX. And then I'm going to ask it to go to my desktop. And I recently saved Fray Vicente. And so if I bring Fray Vicente in, so in case you haven't seen it recently or you're just getting introduced to that as well, the first data set that we're working with is a data set that has the school name in the first row. It has the grade and class for the second row, and then actually begins the data source on the third row, which is kind of the headers that you usually see in data, followed by the input. Along the bottom, there's three tabs. There's grade 4, class A, grade 4, class B, and grade 5, class A. And so when you open Alteryx, it's going to say to you, hey, which one of these do you want me to look at? So I'm going to start with 4, class A. I'm going to click OK. And then the next set of work is going to happen over here in your configuration. You have the ability to say what type of format it is, which sheet you chose. So if I change my mind, I want to go to a different one, I can click on the three dots. Do I want to search for anything specific? Now, in my case, remember the name of the school was on the top and then the grade. And the real data didn't start down here until the third row. So it's currently importing the data from the first line, but I'd actually like it to import the data starting at the third line. So what would that look like? If I click the refresh here, it'll redo what you're thinking of doing. And it'll show you, okay, now my headers are meaningful headers. The data is now in an order that I want. So I've configured it to look how I want. And then what we would do is in the workflow, I would click run, and it will give me an output at the bottom. So your picture of what's happening is up here in the workflow. The manipulation to read it in is happening over here at the configuration. And then the final result will happen down here in the output. Now I brought in this first school, it's grade 4A, but I'd like to also bring in 4B. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to my desktop. And I'm going to say, okay, on my desktop, I can see that this data set is actually located here. Go by date modified. If I have the file somewhere else, like on my desktop, I can actually pick it up and just drop it in as well. Notice I didn't click input up here. I just grabbed the Excel file and brought it in. You can see I can read it in a second time. Now, last time I picked class 4, grade 4, class A. This time I'm going to pick grade 4, class B. And again, I'm going to come over to the configuration file. Notice if I click here on the little green tab, it shows me what I've done. So I've done some work. If I click here on the green tab, it shows me nothing because I haven't read that data in yet. I'm playing with it in configuration, but I never ran anything. This is an Excel file. It's grade 4, class B. I have this same problem with the school name and the year and the data not starting until row 3. So I'm going to again come down and say that my data starts on the 3rd row. I'm going to refresh it to clean it up a little bit. And then I'm going to run it. And now you'll see that there's 32 fields by 28 rows. I can click here and see the data, or I can switch to my previous data set. So this is 2 different ways or options that you have for reading in data, and hopefully it helps you to be a little bit more familiar with this tool that we're going to use called Alteryx.